I'm Veronica Dudo. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, different tone. Secretary of State Marco Rubio addresses European leaders a year after Vice President Vance turned heads. A look at how his speech is being received. Online protection. 30 years after the Communications Decency Act was signed into law, we hear from lawmakers about what works and what needs improvement. Plus, Lenten pilgrimage.
You are that hope. You must recognize that in your hearts, in your lives, in your youth, there is hope.
Pope Leo leaves the Vatican to visit his flock, the message he had for the young and old alike. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast day of St. Juliana, Virgin and Martyr of Nicodema in Campania. Our top story tonight, President Donald Trump's top diplomat, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, returns to the U.S. after speaking out in Germany, Hungary, and Slovakia. His trip focusing on national security as well as defending Western civilization, telling European leaders America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity and wants to do so together with its cherished allies and oldest friends. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Veronica, good evening to you. As President Donald Trump returns here to Washington from Florida, his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was busy in Europe, addressing allies in a major speech and forging new deals.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Budapest, meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Secretary Rubio praising the ties between both nations. The Prime Minister, also one of President Donald Trump's most vocal supporters in the European Union.
We are entering this golden era of relations between our countries, and not simply because of the alignment of our people, but because of the relationship that you have with the President of the United States.
Secretary Rubio's trip follows a stop in Slovakia on Sunday. In both neighboring countries, the U.S. State Department announcing concrete steps towards building nuclear power plants in Central Europe using cutting-edge U.S. nuclear energy technologies, advancing our mutual security interests in the region. Secretary Rubio earlier assured leaders at the Munich Security Conference the destiny of the U.S. and Europe will always be intertwined by centuries of shared history and Christian faith.
Our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally.
Rubio adds the U.S. does not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it.
For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline.
Secretary Rubio warned of what he called the forces of civilizational erasure that menace both America and Europe. His comments drew this criticism.
Contrary to what some may say, woke, decadent Europe is not facing civilizational erasure. In fact, people still want to join our club.
1 year earlier, when Vice President J.D. Vance spoke at the same conference, Vance's comments were more critical of how Europe was behaving.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
And one more note for you tonight. Prime Minister Orban, who has an election coming up in April, has invited President Trump to Budapest. He's also offering to host a U.S., Russia, Ukraine peace summit. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining us now is Michael Dash with the Notre Dame International Security Center. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio framed the U.S.-Europe relationship as part of a shared civilization with deep historical, cultural, economic, and spiritual ties. How effective is this kind of framing in strengthening modern geopolitical alliances, especially among diverse European nations?
Well, the Europeans, I think, were in a way relieved that Secretary Rubio started from the common ground rather than going right into the fault lines and the big differences. So that's in contrast to last year's speech by Vice President J.D. Vance. But on the other hand, the fault lines between the United States and Europe are real, and even a more, shall we say, smooth and non-confrontational speech can't cover up those deep divisions.
Now it's been a little bit of time. Secretary Rubio also received a standing ovation. How is it being received in Europe?
Well, I think the Europeans are happy that they didn't have a replay of last year, but I think they still understand that America and Europe are very far apart on a lot of really important issues, especially Russia and Ukraine, but also some of the cultural issues as well.
Now, of course, we did hear Secretary Rubio say that the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world, but we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers. He specifically referenced America brokering the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza and its ongoing peace efforts between Ukraine and Russia. What did you think of his statements, and could we see a shift in how the United Nations operates?
Well, the Trump administration seems inclined to give up on the United Nations and substitute these boards of peace that, in many ways would replicate the Trump administration's approach to the Israel-Palestine conflict in Gaza. So I'm not sure that people in Turtle Bay in New York know what to make of that.
What do you think of Rubio's decision to travel from the conference to Slovakia and Hungary?
Well, I think that Europe is not monolithic on these issues, and it's been the Orban regime in Hungary and the Fico regime in Slovakia that have been ironically closer to the American view, particularly with regard to Ukraine and Ukraine-Russia peace negotiations. So it's not surprising.
Michael Dash, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
U.S. troops are on the ground in Africa. The Nigerian military says about 100 troops as well as equipment have arrived to train soldiers in the West African country. The military personnel arrived after the Nigerian government requested help from the U.S. The country is fighting with dozens of local armed groups battling for turf. Some of those groups include Islamic militants. Recently, President Trump accused the Nigerian government of not doing enough to protect Christian citizens. The country has denied the accusations. Joining us now is Bill Rubio, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Nigeria's military said the U.S. troops arrived after their request for help with training, with technical assistance, also intelligence sharing. Can you explain a little bit more about what kind of support American troops will be providing?
Yes, it's expected to have the deployment, at least initially, around 200 troops total. This is supposed to be a train, advise, assist mission. So I would expect special operations forces to be training Nigerian troops on counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations. There's very likely going to be assistance with intelligence gathering. I'm surmising here, right? I don't have a full understanding of the mission, but given what we've done in neighboring African countries and in other theaters in the war on terror, so we could expect, again, intelligence gathering, perhaps operation of drones for gathering intelligence for targeting. Those are what I would, the main capacity that I would expect the U.S. to provide to the Nigerian military, which has been overwhelmed in fighting Islamic militants for more than 2 decades now.
Now, in December, the U.S. launched airstrikes on militants in northwestern Nigeria. 2 months later, Nigeria continues to face a protracted fight with dozens of local armed groups. How long could the U.S. be involved in this, and what would that look like?
Look, as a Christian myself, I am concerned about the persecution of Christians worldwide. However, I am concerned that we may be getting into a conflict here that we don't fully understand. This isn't just Islamic terrorists targeting Christians. They also target Muslims themselves. There you have Christians targeting Muslims. You have farmers targeting herders. It's a very complicated, very multifaceted conflict. It's a sectarian and communal conflict. And these types of conflicts, we tend to go in not understanding, and it tends to draw us in further and further. If we are not careful, if we do not have a very specific mission, keep this to advising and training the Nigerian military to fight its battle on the ground, we could get sucked in for years or decades. I just hearken people back to a conflict like Vietnam. I realize that's 60 years ago, but we went in as a special forces advisory mission, and lo, I'm not saying Nigeria is going to become Vietnam, but these type of conflicts can pull you in, suck resources, and take on a life of their own.
As you mentioned, there's a lot of different layers to this. According to data from the United Nations, several thousand people in Nigeria have been killed. Analysts say not enough is being done by the government to protect its citizens. How severe is the threat from these groups?
Well, the main threat that concerns me, as always, is groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. The Islamic State is the preeminent group, and Boko Haram, which is sort of a sister group of the Islamic State. It's actually the original main terrorist organization. Al-Qaeda has recently launched attacks. The entire region, the Sahel region of West Africa, and not just that, but littoral Africa, is becoming embroiled in a conflict. And Nigeria, for whatever problems it has, it isn't an unstable country like its neighbors, like Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso and Benin, where jihadists are in control of significant portions of these countries. We don't want to see Nigeria fall into that. So that is a reason for us to get involved. If I had told you, a day after 9/11 that we might have to check passports from Benin or Burkina Faso for a potential jihadist to come to the United States to launch an attack, people would have laughed. But people that are in this business now don't laugh at that prospect anymore.
Bill Rubio, thank you so much for your insights and expertise on this.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
High-stakes diplomacy returns to Geneva tomorrow as U.S. and Iranian officials prepare for a second round of indirect nuclear negotiations mediated by Oman. White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are set to lead the American delegation facing the Iranian foreign minister amid a massive U.S. military buildup in the region. The talks open as Iran's Revolutionary Guard launch smart control naval drills in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The move marks a sign of deterrence as both nations navigate a path between a potential deal or conflict. It's been 30 years since Congress passed the Communications Decency Act, designated to help new social media companies grow without fear of lawsuits. These companies, like Meta, YouTube, and TikTok, are now some of the world's most powerful companies. Now, several lawmakers want to get rid of those Section 230 protections in the act so users can hold big tech liable for harmful content. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with that story. Eric, what's behind this push?
Well, good evening, Veronica. Yeah, it wasn't too long ago that words like algorithm, AI, or even chat box didn't exist. Now platforms and data scraping are almost universal. The explosion of social media has become increasingly controversial in recent years as online predators target children and teens with cyberbullying and even sexually explicit photos. Now, several lawmakers want to put the blame on big tech. During a recent hearing looking at removing Section 230, lawmakers said social media companies are not doing enough to block third-party content, and they want the public to be able to sue these giants.
The attention addictive algorithms they employ in pursuit of that profit causes serious harms to many, many people. And the worst part of it is that the leaders of these platforms know what they're doing.
Former Congressman Richard Gephardt was House Minority Leader when the original bill passed. He says since then, due to these social media sites, teens are more likely to have mental problems, harm themselves, and it's led to an increase in suicides. And several Republicans agree.
This is an epidemic. It is a mental health crisis, particularly for young teenage girls. And we have no system in place to empower parents and empower consumers to seek justice, to fight back, and protect themselves.
Recent research shows over 90% of American teens ages 13 to 17 use some form of social media, and many say they use it constantly. A South Carolina state legislature says his teen committed suicide after being sextorted. He soon found out other family members were also being targeted.
I got a phone call from an aunt who lived an hour north. Her 14-year-old, my son's cousin, was being extorted by the same person that extorted my son.
A mother whose son committed suicide said her kid was connected to a drug dealer through Snapchat and died from fentanyl poisoning.
Tech companies know and have known for about a decade that they play a significant role in amplifying the soaring number of drug-related deaths in our country. And instead of addressing the issue, they repeatedly hid behind the protections of Section 230.
Social media companies are firing back, saying it's the parents' responsibility to monitor their children's use of the internet. Meta cited its, quote, long-standing commitment to supporting young people, and adds, quote, providing young people with a safer, healthier experience has always been core to our work. Senator Dick Durbin, who is leading the effort to sunset Section 230, says hurdles remain.
I'm under no illusion that this will be easy. Last Congress, Big Tech and its allies in the House killed a bill, the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act, that would have imposed a basic duty of care on tech platforms.
As Senator Durbin alluded, the effort faces resistance from other lawmakers who argue that Section 230 is necessary to protect small companies in the online space, but these are the same companies that are providing big donations to a lot of lawmakers. Both agree some sort of reform needs to take place, and there are several lawsuits making their way through the judicial system wanting to hold social media companies accountable. It's an issue that could ultimately wind up in the U.S. Supreme Court. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
The UK government is also considering ways to keep kids safe from harmful content on social media. This includes a possible ban on the platforms for children under the age of 16, but that's not all.
We're taking the powers to make sure we can act within months, not years. We also need to act very quickly, not just on the age concern, but on the devices and applications that mean the sort of auto-scrolling, the constant gluing to the machine, that you can never stop scrolling.
Pressure has been building in Parliament to address the issue. It comes a week after a preliminary finding from the European Commission that TikTok is in breach of the Digital Services Act for its addictive design. That includes features such as infinite scrolling, autoplay, push notifications, and its highly personalized recommender system. Mourners in Moscow are marking 2 years since Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died in an Arctic prison. Earlier today, several members of his family, supporters, and European diplomats laid flowers at his grave under heavy security. This comes as a new European statement fuels claims he was killed after being poisoned while imprisoned in a Siberian penal colony. An analysis of samples taken from Navalny's body confirmed the presence of a toxin found in a South American poison dart frog. The statement says Moscow had the means, motive, and opportunity to administer the poison. Meanwhile, Russian officials have repeatedly denied being responsible for Navalny's death. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Founders' Faith. As the nation marks President's Day, we look at George Washington's lasting legacy of leadership and his steadfast defense of religious liberty. And a number of companies are raising their prices. What's the reason behind it? More than 20 22,000 single-serve peanut butter products have been recalled. They include both peanut butter packets and small cups containing both peanut butter and jelly. The products were produced by Ventura Foods and sold to distributors, mostly under private label brands. The problem is that pieces of blue plastic were found in a filter at the facility where they are made. The FDA's new designation for the recall is Class 2. According to the guidance, consuming the product could cause temporary illness, but serious or life-threatening issues are not likely. A number of companies are planning to raise their prices. That's according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. While some companies blame tariffs for the increases, others, especially small businesses, cite hefty health insurance costs that firms say they can't absorb or share with suppliers. Many retailers already increased prices last year after new tariffs took effect. Every year, Americans celebrate the legacy of two presidents, Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and honor all of the nation's presidents. While we know it as President's Day, the holiday is officially known as Washington's birthday and began as a way to formally recognize the nation's first president. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, and while celebrations of his birthday still carry on to this day, the federal government moved the annual celebration of President's Day to the third Monday in February, regardless of the date. Our nation's first commander-in-chief left an important legacy on the United States through his leadership and wisdom on several issues, including religious liberty.
He believed that everyone should be able to practice the religion of their choosing. And as President of the United States, he was very devoted to that. When he's living in Philadelphia, he's going to different denominations each week to experience different sorts of services. He's reaching out to religious leaders across the country to make sure that as long as they are good citizens, everyone should be able to practice the religion of their choosing.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Great Love. Pope Leo shares the key to true righteousness during his Sunday Angelus. Plus, the pontiff leaves the walls of the Vatican to make his first parish visit. Pope Leo reminds Christians that the gospel teaches us that we must love greatly for true righteousness.
Una giustizia che non si limita a osservare I comandamenti.
At the Sunday address, the Holy Father emphasized that true righteousness consists in love. He also warned against reducing faith to the bare minimum. The Pope said that the gospel offers us this valuable teaching: minimal righteousness is not enough, great love is needed. Pope Leo XIV made his first parish visit of the Lenten season, traveling to the seaside district of Ostia. It's the first of 5 Sunday stops leading up to Easter, and a powerful message of hope for a community often marked by headlines of crime and violence. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Valentina Di Donato has more.
Crowds of faithful line the streets outside St. Mary, Queen of Peace Basilica, waiting for a glimpse of the Holy Father. The parish holds special meaning. Ostia is closely tied to the spiritual legacy of St. Augustine and his mother, St. Monica, figures deeply rooted in the Augustinian tradition. Ostia is where St. Augustine experienced a profound spiritual ecstasy with his mother, St. Monica, shortly before her death there. Pope Leo XIV arrived in the afternoon, where he was greeted by the Pope's vicar from the Diocese of Rome, Cardinal Baldassare Regna, and parish priest Father Giovanni Patanè.
This is my first visit to a parish in my new diocese.
Allora, sono molto contento.
I'm very happy to begin here in Ostia, especially in a parish dedicated to St. Mary, Queen of Peace, a title so meaningful in the times we are living.
Ostia is a neighborhood that has struggled with violence, criminal organizations, and drug trafficking. Realities the Pope addressed directly during the Mass.
As a parish community, I invite all of you, along with all the other virtuous communities working in these neighborhoods, to continue to give generously and courageously, to sow a seed of the gospel in your streets and in your homes. Don't resign yourselves to a culture of abuse and injustice. Instead, spread respect and harmony, starting with the disarmament of languages.
a call to not surrender to what he called a culture of abuse and injustice. Instead, the Pope urged the faithful to begin with something simple but powerful, disarming their language. Earlier in the visit, he met children and young people gathered in the courtyard. They presented him with a scout scarf and listened as he offered them a message of hope.
You are that hope. You must recognize that in your hearts, in your lives, in your youth, there is hope, for today and for tomorrow, because Jesus walks with us. His mother Mary, Queen of Peace, always walks with us.
He blessed children, greeted families, leaned close to those in wheelchairs, and later met athletes in a nearby gym, signing basketballs and jerseys. The parish itself was founded during the First World War, a ray of light in the leaden sky of war, a mission that he said today remains the same, to oppose division with meekness, to counter hatred with mercy, and to sow peace street by street, home by home. Pope Leo XIV will continue his Sunday parish visits throughout Lent as the Church prepares for Easter. In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.